In other news, Israel's defense minister has proposed ending the army's radio station. It's expected to end broadcasts in March. According to Israel Katz, the move is necessary to preserve the military's nonpartisan nature. But the publicly funded army radio is independent, and getting rid of it is just the latest example of the Netanyahu government trying to control the media. For more on this story, we can go across to our correspondent Noga Tarnopolosky standing by in Jerusalem. Noga, I think the Netanyahu government has many priorities on its hands. So why is it going after this radio station now?
Well, Delano, it's going after this radio station and it's going after the media in general. Just yesterday, for example, we saw the Netanyahu government advance legislation which would allow it to shut down any foreign media, including us here at France 24, without judicial review. The Netanyahu government is also engaged in what it calls a very wide-ranging communications reform, which would allow it to a certain extent to take control of all of the media, to determine, for example, for the government to determine how ratings are counted in Israel, to take control of much of what the public can see. And so this latest move with this station is part of that. What is called Israel Army Radio is in fact a public radio station, much like France 24 is or the BBC. It is run as a trust of the public. It is a completely independent station. And what we're seeing is the government trying to shutter any possible critique of its activities in what is an election year in Israel. And the reason we're seeing that, I believe the election is the reason we're seeing such an urgent need to try and take control over all the airwaves here in Israel.
Last month, Noga, we had the U.S. President Donald Trump, who was in Israel as that ceasefire with Hamas went into effect. When he was addressing the Knesset, Donald Trump jokingly, one could say, asked Israel's president to pardon the country's prime minister. This as Netanyahu continues to face that graft investigation where you are. But now it seems that it wasn't just a joke. A letter has been received by the Israeli president today.
That's right. Depending on where you stand, it still is a joke. The leader of the opposition in Israel, Yair Lapid, accurately has stated since this letter became public that under the currently existing laws of the state of Israel, the first condition for being able to apply even for a presidential pardon is to be convicted, to accept responsibility for a crime, and to express regret for it. Prime Minister Netanyahu is very far from that. And what he's trying to do in many avenues is simply to annul, to cancel, to erase his corruption trial. Of course, in public, Prime Minister Netanyahu says that these 3 charges of corruption against him, breach of trust, bribery, fraud, that these charges, he says, are collapsing. He says this almost every week. But the fact of the matter is that the trial is ongoing, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to find every possible way to flee from it. Clearly, we know already that he was the one who asked President Trump to make this comment in the Knesset. This letter is a follow-up, and we will have to see how the president of Israel responds. But the fact remains that for now, under Israeli law, the only way to be pardoned is to accept responsibility for crimes.
We need to shift focus next to the West Bank, if you will, because Noga, settler violence continues in the West Bank. Just yesterday, we had mass Israeli settlers torching trucks. It seems that this keeps happening. How is this sort of violence allowed to continue?
That's an excellent question. I don't have a full answer for you, but I can tell you we not only saw these images, these terrible images we now have on the screen, the same marauding settlers, Jewish settlers in the West Bank who damaged, this is a Palestinian industrial zone. This is a factory that was attacked yesterday. They also attacked Israeli army soldiers and an Israeli army commander's truck. These are completely out of control, marauding criminals. I don't have a full answer for you, but I can tell you that yesterday an army study was leaked showing that the Shin Bet, the Israel Internal Intelligence Agency, and the police who are in charge with obviously stopping crimes like this from happening are not doing so, quote, for political reasons. And so the burden of handling these matters is falling on the army. The army was not made for policing. The army is overstretched as it is because of the ongoing war-related activities. But the army cannot handle this. I do want to add, Prime Minister Netanyahu's minister in charge of the police, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is a man who used to lead these kind of thugs. 13 convictions under his belt for hate crimes and for terror associations. So what we're seeing is the result of appointing somebody who has a long history as a thug to be in charge of policing in the country.